Chapter 1, Introduction to Writing, Becoming a Successful Writer. This is 1.1. To begin with, writing to think and communicate. One of the first purposes of writing is to help you clarify and articulate your thoughts. Sometimes you can begin by writing a list of points, both pro and con, on a particular issue that concerns you, and that helps you to see which of the arguments are the strongest, or it could even reveal to you what needs additional support or a weaker argument. The second important function of writing is to communicate ideas. College classes, you're required to write essays, research papers. Sometimes you will have to do essay responses on tests. Another practical function would be if you apply to other colleges or universities, you will have to compose letters of application. They may give you a particular essay topic to write on. College or even resumes, if you're going to try to seek employment somewhere, you will have to know how to write a properly formatted resume. Or you may even find yourself responding to a community or national issue by writing a letter to the editor of your local newspaper, or if you believe that a particular intersection needs a four-way stop sign, you may write a letter to your congressman. Overcoming writer's block. Sometimes it can be a rather daunting task to have a particular thing that you need to write about and to sit down and try to begin, and that page is awfully blank. So, here are some helpful tips on how to combat writer's block. First thing, don't procrastinate, and that's the worst. And I'm the worst at procrastinating. I'm really quite terrible at it. But try not to do that. Give yourself some time to sort of marinate on the topic at hand. Free writing is a good way to begin. Just put pen to paper. Just start filling up that blank page with words, and sometimes it's not quite as intimidating. You can follow your inspiration. You can break the project into parts. You can say, okay, I'm going to write the introduction, and then I'm going to stop, and I'm going to give myself a reward. So there are a lot of different things you can do to overcome writer's block. When you finally do sort of decide on a topic and you feel like you have a direction, the very first thing to do is to select an appropriate voice. Your purpose should be to convince your audience that you have something worthwhile to say. So, a very important element of writing is to make sure that you can gain the approval of your audience. And you do this by knowing your audience. You need to think about who you are trying to either convince to believe a way that you do, or to have perhaps that stop sign put up in an intersection that you believe is dangerous. Now, when you present your ideas to somebody, you have to make sure that you come across as educated, rational, and well-informed. But in doing so, you need to be careful not to lose your voice. And that's kind of an interesting problem, because I think a lot of times we tend to write as we speak. And when we begin to write as we speak, we tend to throw in some slang and some things like that. So you have to be really careful about the appropriate voice, that keeping and maintaining that voice. Also watch out for wordy, artificial styles in an attempt to impress your readers. If you have a thesaurus, throw it away. Sometimes people get a little carried away with that, and it just sounds wackadoodle. Also, never talk down to your audience, or apologize for an opinion or a belief that you have, because that tends to make you look like a weak voice, and you do not want that. Also, when you're writing, you need to make sure that you choose the proper pronoun focus. One thing to consider when you're choosing the appropriate voice for your paper is to watch your pronoun. The first person I is acceptable to use. You can do that if it's an autobiographical sketch for an application to a university or a resume. But you're going to want to use it sparingly. Never use you. You is very informal, and there's never a place for the use of you. You'll need to substitute that with one. For the most part, academic writing, you are going to adopt a third-person focus, and this will preferably be in the plural form of they. This third person enables you to avoid boring your reader by suggesting that the topic is of interest only to you. So when you use they, it broadens the audience appeal, because then they think, ooh, a lot of people are interested. Also, it allows you to avoid making pronoun agreement errors, which might occur as the natural result of imitating spoken English. For example, it's incorrect to say everyone should have their book in class. That's something a lot of us say. The correct form is everyone should have his book in class. When you say everyone should have his book in class, if you become concerned with the his, her, that can be a bit cumbersome. But if you will just change it to third person plural, then you can sort of take out the his, her. You don't have to worry about sexist language, and you can just say they should have their book in class, their books rather, in class. So it helps clear up that pronoun issue that you may come across.